if I tried, even if I wanted to, and I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. My love, my love, my love, she keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm.
Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the third webinar of this series. As you may have guessed from the video, today's topic will be on discrimination. But first, let's go over a summary of psychological harassment from Capsule 2. We saw that there's a fine line between incivility and psychological harassment, and the 5 criteria that must be met in order to qualify as psychological harassment: vexatious conduct, repeated behavior, gesture, and speech, hostile or unwanted, attack on the dignity, and creates a harmful environment. The exercise of the right to manage does not constitute psychological harassment when it is done in a non-abusive or non-discriminatory manner. There are 3 possible steps to stop psychological harassment. First step is to let the offender know and ask that the behavior stops. Make an informal complaint to his or her manager or to the Human Resources Department. And finally, make a formal complaint to the HR department, the union, or by using the confidential helpline. And finally, filing a complaint is serious. If it is done in bad faith, disciplinary action may be taken. In today's session, we will start by sharing with you our obligations as an employer, the 14 different grounds of discrimination, the types of discrimination, and we will conclude with the consequences of discrimination in the workplace and how we can prevent it. We wish that in this day and age, we wouldn't need to be giving this presentation. There shouldn't be any discrimination, and I believe we know better. Now, we also understand that we cannot eliminate all forms of discrimination by hosting this webinar, but knowledge is power. The objective of this session is to give everyone the necessary knowledge to be more aware of our actions and how our intentions can be perceived. We also hope that this webinar will help you better identify discriminatory behavior and ultimately learn how to report it. Discrimination consists of treating a person or a group of people differently and unfavorably compared to other individuals in the same situation. There are a few grounds of discrimination which we will see in the next slide, and the law protects us all from being discriminated against from any of those reasons. Let's review the 14 different grounds of discrimination and some examples by starting with age. Refusing to promote someone because he or she is too young or old and disregarding their experience. For example, they are too young or immature to manage a team, or they are too old and won't understand today's generation. Social status, refusing to hire a homeless person who is trying to get by or someone who is too rich. They'll never work hard enough. They don't need the money. Political views, setting apart a person who has different political convictions. We see this more with the very popular US election in 2020. Marital status, whether they're single, married, divorced, adopted, a member of a single-parent family, any family relationship or alliance of any kind. Pregnancy and the eventual need for maternity leave. A handicap and its means to alleviate it, whether it be physical or psychological. Obviously, if the nature of the job requires it, for example, firefighter, one can discriminate. Gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, heterosexual, gay, lesbian, bisexual, or a person who expresses any other form of sexual or emotional attraction or dislike of a person to another person or persons. Language, any spoken language, including accents and degree of fluency. Although French is the official language of Quebec, it could be considered discriminatory to require proficiency in that language if it is not necessary for the performance of a function. Race, color, ethnic origin, or nationality, regardless of country of origin or skin color. Religion, gender, female, male, or intersex. Gender is usually assigned at birth after evaluation of the reproductive system. Discrimination against the person who is breastfeeding is discrimination on the basis of gender. Criminal records, if not related to the position sought. Yellow Pages has the obligation to treat you with respect and protect your dignity. It must ensure that discriminatory behavior towards you is not tolerated in any way. There are 3 different types of discrimination: direct discrimination, indirect discrimination, and systemic discrimination. All of us have probably been a witness of direct discrimination at some point in our lives. It is the most blatant form of discrimination. There is an intention to discriminate against an individual or a group of individuals on the basis of group characteristics, real or presumed. Examples illustrating direct discrimination are refusing a candidate because they belong to an ethnic minority. The ground of discrimination would be ethnic origin. And laying off an employee after being informed that they have an illness. The ground of discrimination would be disability in this case. Indirect discrimination may result from a certain practice, policy, or regulation that applies to everyone in the same way, but which may have a detrimental effect on some people because of the characteristics they possess. It is the most subtle form of discrimination. It's generally without intent to discriminate. Rather, it results from a seemingly unbiased, uniform application of a standard policy, rule, or practice. Examples illustrating indirect discrimination are requiring a minimum of years of experience for an entry-level position. The grounds of discrimination would be age. Requiring a minimum height for a job where height is not relevant for the role. The ground of discrimination would be gender in this case, because the average height of a male versus female is significantly different. There are 2 schools of thought. The first one is to teach children that they are all the same and to not recognize their differences. Or the second school of thought, which I personally believe, is to teach children to recognize differences between one another and to celebrate those differences. Encourage them to be open and curious about other cultures. Kids don't instinctively see differences. Discrimination is not an innate behavior. In fact, it's learned. Despite what you may be thinking, these circles are not equal. I repeat, these two circles are not equal. One of them is in fact larger than the other. What I need you to do is determine which one that is. So please, raise your hand if you believe the blue circle is larger than the red one. All right, now raise your hand if you believe the red circle is larger than the blue one. Now, before I said anything about these two circles, what was your first instinct? Equal, right? Because they look equal? Well, the reason why they look equal is because in fact they are equal. These two circles are identical. Yet I'm sure I got almost each and every one of you to raise your hand and say that they're not. So what did we learn? That we can all be manipulated to believe something that goes against our instinct. Just imagine as a child you are taught that the blue circle is larger than the red one. If you say it enough times, you convince yourself that that's the truth. If you're told the lie enough times, it becomes part of your reality. Discrimination in the workplace may have negative effects on compensation, your career progression, access to vocational training, the workload, exclusion of an employee, disciplinary measures, and of course, termination of employment, in which case the dismissal would be null and void and the employee would be reinstated. Let's review some inappropriate behaviors that can be displayed in the workplace. Whatever our intentions, it is more important than ever to be aware of how people around us may perceive them. It is not acceptable to tell stereotypical jokes, or assume someone's nationality by their appearance, name, or way of dressing. Not inviting a colleague to a happy hour because they do not drink alcohol. Using offensive terms to describe someone. On the opposite side of the spectrum, let's review some appropriate behavior. If you are genuinely interested in your colleague's customs or religion, or if you have doubts about how to discuss a sensitive topic with someone, here are some acceptable ways to start the conversation. Ask them to meet with you privately to discuss it. Do not ask sensitive questions in a public setting. Ask them if they are even comfortable sharing this type of information with you. And always invite them to team outings, regardless of their beliefs or customs. Allow them to refuse or to explain their choice. What measures are in place to avoid discrimination at Yellow Pages? Well, we have a policy in place to identify expectations. There's the Code of Ethics and the policy against psychological harassment. We have webinars such as this one to raise awareness. And of course, reporting discriminatory behavior is important. Intervene as efficiently and quickly as possible, because to tolerate or not to act in the face of misconduct is to send the message that you approve it. Disciplinary measures. Of course, it is the last resort, but in proportion to the gravity of the misconduct, in the case of a serious offense, disciplinary measures could be termination of employment. To conclude, Yellow Pages is proud to be an inclusive company and to give everyone an equal opportunity to grow, succeed, and reach their full potential. We have zero tolerance for all forms of discrimination. In one of the Emilio surveys, we asked all employees if they feel that they are treated with respect, regardless of gender, age, origin, religion, disability, or sexual orientation. And we're proud to report that the average score is 94%. We remind you that the policy in place at YP provides us with the steps to follow if you wish to report a problematic situation. And of course, a reminder that your HR team remains available to offer you advice. If you have any questions, we invite you to reach out to your dedicated HR partner. You can also email us at the HR inbox. Thank you for your time. We hope you enjoyed this capsule. And we look forward to seeing you in the next and last webinar, which will be on diversity.